My name is Charles Smith. I'm Director of Retirement Plan Advisory Services at First National Bank of Omaha, where I help plan sponsors design, implement, administer, and govern their defined contribution retirement plan. And I want to spend just a couple minutes today talking about the CARES Act, the $2+ trillion stimulus package to help small businesses and individuals deal with the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic. Specifically, there are 4 provisions contained within the CARES Act that apply specifically to retirement plans. The first is allowing a special $100,000 distribution to all participants who are either test positive for COVID-19, their spouse tests positive for COVID-19, or they've got some other adverse financial consequence due to this pandemic. For example, they've been laid off, they've been furloughed, they've lost childcare, kind of a potpourri of different financial ways that they could be impacted. With these special $100,000 distributions, they would not be subject to the 20% mandatory withholding that typically would apply. They're not subject to the 10% excise tax that normally applies on early distributions. They would be taxed over a 3-year period instead of just the year in which it was distributed to them. And they would actually have 3 years in which to roll it back into the retirement plan or an IRA if they so chose. The second provision is an increase in the loan amounts available to participants who are impacted by the coronavirus. Currently, the loan amount is the lesser of $50,000 or 50% of a participant's vested account balance. For those impacted, that loan amount could be increased to $100,000 or 100% of the vested account balance, again, whichever is lower. Third is a 1-year suspension in loan payments for those who are impacted by the coronavirus. So a 1-year reprieve from whenever that notice is given to a plan sponsor that no loan payments would be due. So if they gave a notice in June of 2020, they could actually not have to make loan payments again until June of 2021. And the fourth and final provision is a suspension of the RMD requirements, the required minimum distributions that are typically required for someone who is age 70 and a half or age 72. There is no RMD requirement in 2020. Those will start up again in 2021. And what's unique about that provision is it does apply to all participants, not just those impacted by COVID-19 or the coronavirus. So it has more to do with the fact that the account balances have been reduced due to the stock market reacting to the coronavirus, COVID-19. So what we're seeing is, as a plan sponsor, you've got to make a decision whether you want to actually allow for these provisions. There's nothing in the Act that says they are required. Instead, you as a plan sponsor get to decide whether you want to allow one or all of these provisions. What we're seeing is that the record keepers are kind of driving this decision-making process. Basically, they have to be able to get their systems up to date to be able to implement all these changes, the increased loan amount, the increased distribution. And so once they have those systems up to date, they're then reaching out to plan sponsors and giving them one of 2 options, either the opt-in, which basically says we're going to keep your plan exactly how it is with none of these provisions unless you affirmatively direct us that you want us to start implementing them and allowing for the loans and the distributions. The opposite of that is the opt-out, which is the record keeper saying our systems are now in place. We're going to assume that you want all these provisions unless you tell us that you do not want all of them or you only want some of them. Some of the decisions for a plan sponsor to wrestle with when making this decision to allow these provisions or not is how impacted their employees are. Have they furloughed a lot of employees? Have they laid off a lot of employees? Or they know that they're otherwise impacted financially and they want to give them kind of a lifeline to be able to take out these additional amounts. And that needs to be weighed with plan leakage. Generally, it's in the best interest of participants for them to leave money in the retirement plan, and that's why we usually have a lot of restrictions on that ability. And so, again, you've got to weigh as a plan sponsor if you want to allow someone to take out $100,000 for this one-time distribution, weighing plan leakage versus the need for participants. So there's a lot to wrestle with as a plan sponsor. It's not just as easy as these are all in. You really need to make an educated decision with respect to your group. So again, thanks for listening to my discussion. If you have any questions, we're always here to help at First National Bank. Thank you.